Now we have Bill Howell. Bill Howell is from the Northern Idaho Wolf Alliance. He's a founding member, actually, based in Sandpoint, Idaho. NIWA is a grassroots organization that seeks to educate the public about the essential role that wolves play in maintaining a healthy forest ecosystem.
His dream was that one day all Americans would be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. Dr. King also dreamed of the day when all Americans would enjoy the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Since that famous speech, significant progress in civil rights has occurred and continues to occur. But that rally, and especially Dr. King's speech, was historic because it crystallized the obvious truth that all people are human beings, regardless of the color of their skin. Today it seems ridiculous that such an obvious truth was not already known and accepted, but it wasn't. And the change that has since occurred involved a paradigm shift that was hundreds of years in the making. Paradigm shifts take time. They take time because it's a process that requires a fundamental change in the way we think, both as individuals and as people, as a people. This process is just how our species evolves and goes from the status quo toward progressive change. In many ways, we are still a barbaric and ignorant species, but we're getting there. The paradigm shift that Dr. King helped create is an example of how our species gets there from here. In my view, Dr. King's dream and the civil rights movement was a response to a paradigm called anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism is defined as interpreting reality exclusively in terms of human values and experience, and regarding humans as the central element of the universe. It's the idea that everything is all about us, and that our kind is what's important. Now, such thinking has very ancient roots and run deep in humans. In a sense, it's like an ancient tradition that permeates our culture and behavior. And on one hand, such thinking seems perfectly reasonable, but it's a myopic, nearsighted view that can easily become distorted and lead to conflict. For example, Dr. King's dream describes the distorted belief that one kind of skin color creates a different kind of us than another kind of skin color. Dr. King's dream spoke to us about the ignorance of thinking and believing that skin color somehow makes us different kinds of people. There are many other forms of this ancient tradition. Another form is the belief that women are property. This belief is also hard to imagine in this day and age, but it has been the status quo for a very, very long time. The women's rights movement is a response to this form of anthropocentrism. The environmental movement is a response to another form, the belief that this planet belongs to humans and that we can do whatever we want with it, including contaminating the air, land, and sea. And the animal rights movement is a response to yet another form, one that believes domesticated animals are our property to do with as we please, including laboratory testing, sport fighting events, and even vivisection. Well, I have a dream too. I dream that one day all Americans will comprehend that we are just one of many species inhabiting this planet, and that one day we will hold this truth to be self-evident, that all wildlife has the right to exist, regardless of its use to man. I have a dream that one day wildlife will be judged by its role in sustaining the natural world and not by the prejudice, mythology, and ignorance of mankind. My dream is also a response to a form of anthropocentrism, a form that believes wildlife exists solely for our pleasure, exploitation, or sport. But for my dream to come true, a paradigm shift will have to occur in the way our species thinks about the other life forms on this planet and how it thinks about itself. This national rally is a response to the belief that we can indiscriminately kill wolves or manage them on the brink of extinction based on a lie that wolves cause significant levels of depredation of livestock, or a fear that wolves will decrease the number of animals that some people want to kill for sport. In my opinion, the ranchers who despise wolves because of this lie, and the hunters who despise wolves because of this greed, are just crying wolf. All of the movements I mentioned, and my dream as well, have something in common. Fundamentally, they all are about respect. respect for another human being regardless of skin color, respect for half the human population regardless of gender, respect for the physical environment regardless of the decrease in profits, respect for domesticated animals regardless of our power over them, and respect for wildlife regardless of our ability to exploit them. The wildlife on Earth today has existed on this planet longer than humans have existed as a species. Nature sustains this menagerie of life forms through a system of interrelationships that we call an ecological web. Nature is the interrelationships that exist between life. And this web is stable only with both predator and prey. And such a diversity of species can only be sustained through coexistence. Now, coexistence is another one of those obvious truths that future generations of people will marvel at our inability to accept. It is our ignorance and the arrogance that ignorance breeds which prevents people from accepting this obvious truth. And it is our ignorance and arrogance that sustains anthropocentrism. Just as it once kept us from perceiving that African Americans are human beings and that women are not chattel, it enables us to disregard the fact that coexistence, both with other peoples around the world and with the natural world, is an obvious truth. Gandhi once said, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way in which its animals are treated." I have a dream that one day humans will respect the right of other life forms to exist regardless of whether it walks on 2 legs or 4, or even 6 legs or 8. Now, my dream probably seems ludicrous to some people, but I suspect Dr. King's dream seemed ludicrous to many people. There's another quote from Gandhi that I have to remember from time to time while working on the wolf issue in Idaho, and that quote is, "First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win." The science is clear that wolves are a keystone top-down predator and are essential for maintaining a healthy ecosystem. The federal mandate requiring that only 150 wolves need to exist in the entire state of Idaho was set by politics, not science. It is willful ignorance and arrogance that is driving the politics. But it is the ignorance and apathy of the general public that allows such politics to dictate our wildlife management policies. Now, ignorance is nothing to be ashamed of. We are all ignorant about a great many things. But willful ignorance and intentionally misleading the public is something to be ashamed of. And it seems as though our policymakers have forgotten their fundamental responsibility. They report to the land, not to the politicians or special interest groups. And I also want to remind these public servants that history is watching. Now, one day, when the general public becomes educated about the essential role that wolves play in nature, the status quo paradigm of our current wildlife management policies will change because the politics will change. But this will require a paradigm shift in the way the general public thinks. And paradigm shifts of this kind have to come from the grassroots because we are trying to change the status quo. And so I think that education is the key to creating the change in the public's attitude that will translate into the political change we seek. Now, I speak of these ideas not just to try to end the slaughter of wolves or stop the destruction of wildlife for sport. I also speak of these ideas for the benefit of our species, because when my dream becomes a reality, it will mean that humans have finally transcended yet another part of our nature that is barbaric, just as we have with the other movements I mentioned. When my dream becomes real, it will mark a milestone in our evolutionary development. This national rally is an important and historic step in the paradigm shift toward respecting the rights of wolves and, in the process, the rights of all wildlife. But it is also an important and historic step in the social evolution of our species, learning how to respect the universal right of non-human life forms to exist. In closing, when you return home to your communities, I encourage you to focus your work on gently educating those whose anthropocentric views prevent them from seeing the obvious truth, that we don't own this planet, that wildlife has the right to exist, and that we must share this planet and be good stewards, not just for the sake of future generations of humans, and not just for the sake of future generations of animals, but also for the sake of our own development as a species. Thank you. Thank you.